All right, let's jump right in. We're about to look at one of the most interesting and honestly kind of strange objects in the Old Testament. But we're not just going to study it like some dusty museum piece. No, we're going to follow its story. And it's a story that starts in a sacred tent and ends up completely flipping our idea of what sustenance really means. This is the unexpected journey of the bread of the presence.
So let me just ask you this, and stick with me here. What if a loaf of bread could be the hero of an epic story? I know, it sounds a little bit like a Pixar movie, doesn't it? But that is exactly the journey we're about to go on.
So every story has a beginning, and our story starts with the birth of our main character. And trust me, this was no ordinary bread. From the moment it was made, it was set apart for a pretty huge destiny.
Let's start with the name, because it tells you pretty much everything you need to know. The bread of the presence. In some Bibles, it's called the showbread. See, its whole job was to be perpetually, 24/7, in the presence of God. It sat there on a solid gold table inside the tabernacle, a constant reminder, a memorial offering.
So what exactly went into making this stuff? Well, the recipe in Leviticus was super specific. First, you could only use the finest flour, nothing but the best. Then, it had to be baked into exactly 12 loaves, one for each tribe of Israel, a constant visual reminder. They were stacked up in 2 neat piles, 6 loaves each, on that table of pure gold. And for the final touch, get this, pure frankincense was placed on top of each stack, symbolizing prayers rising up to God. This wasn't just baking, you know? It was a deeply sacred ritual.
Okay, so now that we've met our protagonist, let's talk about its day-to-day life. For literally centuries, this bread followed a very strict, very sacred weekly routine. This was its whole world, this weekly rhythm. It all started on Friday, when a specific family of priests, the Kohathites, would get to work preparing 12 fresh loaves. Then came the big day, the Sabbath. That's when this sacred switcheroo happened. The old bread from the week before was taken off the table, and the brand new bread was set out. But the old loaves weren't just tossed out, no way. They became a holy meal, just for the priests. And then, the next week, the whole thing started all over again.
And who got to eat this bread? Well, Leviticus is crystal clear about that. It was only for the priests, Aaron and his descendants. It was their sacred portion, a direct provision from God's offerings. For hundreds of years, that law was absolute, unbreakable.
But you know, every good story needs a twist, right? A moment where the rules get seriously challenged. And for our humble loaf of bread, that moment came when a future king showed up at the door, desperate and on the run for his life.
So for years and years, that rule was totally absolute. No exceptions, period. Until David. You can find this incredible story in 1 Samuel 21. David is fleeing from a jealous and murderous King Saul. He gets to the tabernacle and asks the priest, a guy named Ahimelech, for some food, just 5 loaves of bread. The problem? The only bread they had on hand was the holy bread of the presence.
I mean, can you imagine being Ahimelech in that moment? You're caught between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, you have the sacred, unchanging law of God, only priests eat this bread. But on the other hand, you have this desperate human need right in front of you. God's chosen future king is starving. So what does he do? Ahimelech makes a radical choice. He puts human need above the ritual, and he gives David the holy bread.
And that single act of compassion didn't just fade into history. Oh no, it echoed for centuries, so much so that Jesus himself brought it up. When his own disciples got in trouble for breaking a technical Sabbath rule, he pointed right back to this story about David. And his point was revolutionary. He was showing everyone that the law was made for our benefit, not to crush us. It revealed that God cares more about mercy than sacrifice.
And this, right here, this is where the story of our bread hits its absolute climax. Its journey from a simple offering to a rule-bending exception was all pointing toward a much deeper, much more profound spiritual reality.
And here it is, the ultimate fulfillment of this ancient symbol. In the Gospel of John, Jesus makes this absolutely breathtaking declaration, "I am the bread of life." He takes that physical image, that bread of the presence, and says, that was just a picture. I'm the real thing. He is the one who satisfies our deepest spiritual hunger, forever.
And when you look at them side by side, the parallels are just beautiful. The showbread was holy, set apart for God. It provided life-giving physical food for the priests, and it was always, always present in the tabernacle. Well, Jesus fulfills every single one of those pictures. He provides true spiritual sustenance,
and he promises to always be present with those who believe in him.
So, let's just wrap this up. Our little loaf of bread has been on quite a journey, hasn't it? From a sacred offering in a tent in the desert, all the way to a powerful symbol of a brand new spiritual reality.
The book of Hebrews really puts a beautiful bow on this whole thing. It explains that the tabernacle and all the stuff in it was basically a shadow of the real thing that was coming. They were powerful symbols, for sure, but they were pointing to something greater, a new, better covenant made possible through Jesus. And just like that, the story of a simple loaf of bread becomes this profound picture of how an ancient ritual can blossom into a timeless spiritual truth. It kind of leaves us with a big question to chew on, doesn't it? What other ancient symbols are just waiting for us to uncover their deeper, lasting meaning for us today?